Hi everyone, and welcome to my next video tutorial, which is going to be focused on integrating an audio capture within our Django web applications. And this is going to help bolster security on our websites. Now, when it comes to captures, there are different kinds that you get. Now, the most famous capture that you usually get is the one that is built in with Google, and that particular version is of course the one where you need to click on all of the traffic signs or click where all the cars are. That is one type of capture. There's also a capture where you need to type in the words, solve a math equation, figure out a puzzle, or anything of the sort. But we also get an audio capture as well, and this is as you would expect it to be, where you would listen to an audio recording and then you'll type in an input field whatever you hear from that audio recording. So like I said, when we are working with captures, we have different types, and captures just help to prevent any bots from abusing our web application of sorts. All right, but in any case, let's go ahead and get started. Now we're going to utilize the Captcha library here to set up an audio capture. And before we go in and dive straight into this video tutorial, there's a few things I want to mention beforehand. So make sure that you have an application that you want to go ahead and utilize this with. So I have a basic registration form here. Now the exact code that I'm utilizing is based on a previous tutorial that I have made on this channel, and that particular video I will be sure to add in the description below if you want to follow explicitly. But for those of you that already have experience with setting up registration and login forms, you're good to go. Okay. All right, in any case, let's go ahead and get started. So here is my registration form, and I want to add in an audio capture, and that audio capture is going to be on this form here, and users won't be able to register for an account without filling in their details and of course completing the capture. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so you want to head on over to your application. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to install the Captcha library. So we can see that is right here. So let me stop my server. Copy that. Say pip install Captcha. Okay, so you want to make sure that you install that within your application. So it does have a few side packages that come along with it. So let's just give it a moment. And there we go. So you want to make sure you add it in that library. Now, of course, we don't need to attach this to our settings.py file or anything. Okay, it works out of the box. Now, with our capture, we need to store it somewhere. So we're going to be given a default audio file. And if we look here in the documentation, what's going to happen is you're going to be given a default file here. So here is a sample of that audio capture that's going to play. So if I were to play this, it's going to say the numbers. Okay, so that is a sample of this audio capture as you just heard. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to set up our static file directory so that we can store this audio capture that we are generating. So what I'm going to do is head on over to my settings.py file, and I'll scroll right here to the bottom where the static URL is. And we're going to want to go ahead and define our static files dirs. And to do so, we can say static, and you want to say files underscore dirs equals. And if you're using Django 4 and up, what you're going to want to say is base underscore dir and then / and then we can say static here. Right, so what we're doing here essentially is we're telling Django to serve our static files in our static directory. Now we need to create that. So what you want to do is in your base directory here, you can just say new folder and you can call this static. Okay, now in this directory is where we're going to store our audio capture files, which we are going to generate with the help of this library that we installed. Okay, so in any case, we're telling Django to look in our base directory, which is right here, and look for the static directory, which is right here. So we're telling Django essentially to go on ahead and load or serve our static files according to this destination that we've set up. Okay, so make sure you've got that in place. Next thing that we're going to do is go to the Django app, so Django app, and to our forms.py file. And as you can see here, this is my create user form that I have set up here. So it's taking in the username, email, password 1 and password 2 fields from the default user model that I have here from Django. Now you can see the correlation here. So username, email, password, and password confirmation. So password 1 is just the password and password 2 is the confirmation itself. Right, so all you're going to want to do now is create an extra field. Okay, so to do so, all you're going to want to do is we can head on over to a form that we have set up here, and we can just give this a name. I'm going to call this Captcha underscore input. So we need an input field to enter in what we hear from the audio recording, the default. Okay, so you want to make sure you go ahead and set that up. Say equals forms dot char field, and then we can set a label here, and the label here I'm going to say is enter Captcha. Okay, and we want to make this required, so we're going to say comma and then required equals true. Okay, that's going to ensure that users actually fill out this captcha and they don't skip it. I realize I made a spelling mistake here. So captcha is always quite tricky to spell. So Captcha. There we go. Unless that was right already. Okay. In any case, we want to add this now to our field. So what I'm going to do is right at the end here, I'll put in the following. So Captcha underscore input. And there we go. All right. So make sure you've got that you've defined a field here called Captcha input or anything you want to define. It's very important that you set that required to true, and that you just add that in right here in your field. So Captcha underscore input. So we now will have that field appear once we've configured it right here. Okay, perfect. Then we need to generate our captcha. Okay, so we can now just navigate to our views.py file. Right here. So right at the top, what I want to do is just refer to the code that we have here. And from the captcha.audio module, I want to import the audio captcha class. So zoom in here. We want to go ahead and copy this line. So we want to make use of that class. Very important that we have that in place. And then what we can do is, for example, here I have my register view. At the top of the file, I want to start to declare everything that I need. First, I want to specify the number that's going to play. So with this particular audio capture, it focuses on the number. So I'm going to set a number for now. I'm going to say captcha underscore text. And here I'm going to set this to 5454. Okay, and then I need to set the audio file path. So where do I want this path to be? Where do I want this capture audio recording to be housed in? So I want to create a variable saying audio underscore file underscore path equals. And let's look at our directory. And in our base directory, we have static. So we want this to be in our served from our static directory. So I'm going to say static / and what do you want to call the name? I'm going to call it Captcha, and you want to say .wav, so a .wav file, just to make sure that that will work nicely as the audio output. Right, perfect. So we've got that now into place. So make sure that you've gone ahead and defined that accordingly. And the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to generate and save the audio file. Now, to do that, what you're going to want to refer to is the class that you've imported. So here we have audio capture, and I'm just going to put that there, add that in, and then we want to write. So we're going to say .write, and we want to go ahead and set up the details. So first of all, the first argument that we're going to give here is going to be the number that we want the file to play. So we can first of all just add in the Captcha text. And then we need to define where is this going to be binded to. So we want this to be in the file, in the audio file path here, which is captcha.wav. Okay, so we are generating a Captcha audio file, which is going to play the default number Captcha as 5454. So we're setting this manually here. Later, I will show you how you can randomly generate it upon making a fresh request to the registration page. So users will always have a different Captcha that they need to listen to, so a specific number. Okay, so we've got that set up here. So our Captcha is going to be programmed with the following code here, which we're going to hear 5454 in the audio recording, and we're then going to generate this recording in the following directory. All right, so that's what we're doing here in the following lines of code. Right, perfect. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that whatever is added into the input field that we've defined matches whatever is set in the text here. So what is actually the answer? So this is technically the answer of said recording. So to do so, we can navigate to where we're checking if the form is valid, and when we're saving it, we can just add in an extra conditional here. So I'm just going to remove the colon and I'm going to say and request.post.get, and here I'm going to put in that particular field that we defined, so Captcha input, which we'll put in our HTML in a moment. And then we want to get that and we want to check if it's equals to the Captcha texture, so what we are comparing it against. Okay, so let me zoom out so you can see. So that is what we are comparing to make sure that it is as it should be. All right. Okay, and everything else here is of course just going to be the default form logic that outputs the registration view that we have here. So that is just the adjustment that you're going to want to make there. So we just want to make sure that we're comparing that. It's going to be the following. Right, now we can now head on over to our templates directory. So let's go to our register.html file and let's see what we have. So by default, we have our form set up as follows, but now we want to load static because we want to incorporate the Captcha that will be generated when we run our project. So I'm going to say load static. There we go. So we have our CSRF token. We have our default field that's going to be output. And what I want us to do then is I want us to ensure that we go on ahead and add in a small option to listen to our Captcha. So we'll just add in some spacing for the button. And I'm going to add in some text here. So I'm going to say listen to the Captcha. Okay, and we can just set the audio controls here. So we'll add in default HTML logic. Okay, and the source. Okay, and that's going to be static. So we're telling Django to look in our static directory for a Captcha.wav file, which will be generated whenever we make a request to the registration page. Say type equals, it's going to be audio/wav. That's what we've defined. And there we go. And what we can also hear is if in some reason this doesn't work, we can just say your browser does not support the audio element. And so we've got that set up. Okay, perfect. So we've got that in place. Now, what we can do is we can just go ahead and run our server. So you just want to say python manage.py run server. Okay, head on here, refresh the registration page. And there we go. So we can see we've got our username, our email address, password confirmation. And here we can see we have entered Captcha. So we need to listen to the Captcha, and then we need to put in whatever we here in the following option. Now you can see here when I click the register button, it's going to, of course, by default say, please fill out this field. Now let me show you this first. So here I'm just going to say chest, or maybe I can say john@mail.com. Let's say register. Nope. Let's put in the password. Confirm it. And let's see if we can sign up without doing this CAPTCHA. So I'm going to say register here. It says, no, you need to enter in the CAPTCHA. So here we have some security already in place. Now I know what the CAPTCHA will be because I manually hard-coded it as 5454. And that is exactly what you'll hear here. Now let's say, for example, I just put something completely random in. So let's say I put 0212. Register. It's going to redirect the page and it's not going to allow you to register. Okay, and it's of course going to remove, of course, the password options that you had in place as well. So you can see here, it's not going to allow you to register until you put in the correct CAPTCHA that has been put into place. Okay. So let's go ahead and enter in our password. And let's re-enter it. And now let's listen to the CAPTCHA. So we've got that here. Here 5, 4, 4, 4. Okay, so 5, 4, 5, 4. And now you can see, if we go to our static directory, here is that captcha.wave file here that has been created for us. And we can see it was created and sent to the following path here when we went ahead and wrote everything together. So now if I put in 5454, which is what I heard, make sure everything is filled out and say register, it should redirect me to my login page. And there we go. So we can see that that was a success and we've been redirected to the login page and we tested everything as it should be. All right, well done. So that is how you can set up an audio CAPTCHA. Right, now the next thing I want to do, I can just close register and forms for now, is I want to show you if I were to make some changes here. So let me set this now to 3, 4, 5, 6. Get on back and I'm going to go back to the register page. Now let's listen here carefully to the CAPTCHA and 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see there it changes each time I put it. Okay. All right, and now if you have a look here in your directory, we still have one CAPTCHA file. So it's just going to override and ensure we don't have multiple CAPTCHA files each time. Okay, perfect. Now, the next thing that you're, of course, going to wonder is, what if, for example, I decide to randomize it? So each time when you refresh, it's going to be a different CAPTCHA. So if I listen to this again, it's going to show the same again because I've pre-programmed that.
3.
So it's 3 again.
5. 6.
So it's the same each time. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in functionality so that will work for us. All right, so let's continue the process. So now what we're going to do is, instead of us hard coding in a particular value here, what we're going to do is we're going to make this a bit more dynamic and generate a new CAPTCHA each time. Now, here comes the trick. We need to ensure that our users will be able to get a new CAPTCHA here in terms of the number order when they refresh. It's going to have to be new every time, but we don't want that number to be lost because of this random generator function that we're putting into play when we are making our post request. Because what can happen is we will generate a new number, which is good and well, but when we register for an account and submit that post request, it can change last minute before you are actually being redirected and registering your account. So what we're going to want to do is implement some session handling, and then it's very important that you also delete your session afterwards as well. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. First thing that we're going to do is I'm going to move the form that's declared here, which is to create the user form, just above, just like that. Then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and do a get request. So I want to check if I'm going to get a get request if I refresh my page. So I'm going to go ahead and do the following and say if request dot method is equals to that of a get request, right? And then the code that I have here at this moment I can just indent. Okay, and then what I want to do is instead of hard coding a value here, I'm going to import the random module. So above here I can say import random. And then what I'm going to do is, since the hard-coded values need to be in a string format, I need to cast to a string, so I'll say str. Then I'm going to call the random module, and from the random module I want to utilize the randint function, and I want to generate a random 4-digit number each time from 1000 to 9999, and that's going to generate a new captcha each time, instead of me hard coding it in. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to store that into a session. So I can say request.session, and here I'm going to say captcha underscore text. So I'm going to be storing captcha, calling the session captcha underscore text, and that's going to pertain to whatever value is here stored in this variable. So I'm going to say captcha underscore text. Okay, so it's going to be stored in the session now when I'm making my get request. So each time I make a get request, this function is essentially going to assign a new captcha, as it should, because for security, our captcha needs to be different each time we make a request, each time we refresh the page. And then it's going to be stored into that session, whatever that latest value that was assigned was. Okay, so we've got that set. Then, as normal, what we're going to do is we're just going to ensure that we've set that file path. As you can see, it's still set to static/captcha.waf. And then, as you can see here, what we're doing is we're just setting the captcha to write, taking in the captcha text, and then that audio file path we're setting as well. Now, I just want to show you this process here with the get request, just so you can see that it's going to change each time, and whatever changes is going to be stored in that session. So I can say print captcha underscore text for now. Right, so let me just refresh. Okay, 6801. So it stored that also into my session, and I just output that, and that's every time I make a get request. So each time a user refreshes the page, it's going to change. So 3348, and that's exactly how it should be. Now the reason we put it in a session is we want that to persist. Whatever we stored in that session, we want to persist when we're making our post request. We don't want it to be lost. Unlike earlier when we hard-coded the value, it's going to stay consistent. So here where we are creating the form with the post data, what we want to do is right below that, we want to retrieve that stored captcha. So the last value here was 3348, for example, and we want to ensure that we have that stored. So I'm going to say stored underscore captcha equals, I'm going to say request.session.get, and I want to get that session, which is called captcha underscore text, so whatever you put in the session there, and that's going to allow us to retrieve that stored session. Then when we're submitting our form and getting the input for whatever we put in that input, we want to get that particular stored captcha. Okay, so store underscore captcha, and we're just going to replace it right here. Okay. Perfect. Now we want to make sure that the captcha isn't always going to be the same. So as soon as we register for an account, we can delete that particular captcha that's stored in the session. So after we've saved that to the database, we can say del, and we can say request.session, and then here we can say captcha underscore txt. So we want to delete that session. Very important. All right, perfect. So we've got that in place. So let's go ahead and test the process out. So I'm going to restart the server. Okay, and let's refresh here. So we have 6695 in this session. Let's register a new user. Let's say dn at mail.com. Okay, now the captcha, so it should be 6695. There we go. So let's register. And there we go. Perfect. All right, so let's head on back. All right, and what I'm going to see now is 8425. So we made that GET request. As we can see there, we went to the login, 8427. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload the page. And there we see we have a new one, 5997. Refresh again. 7774. Okay, let's go ahead and use that. So here I'm going to say Neil at mail.com. So we're just doing a little bit of testing here, you could say. So it should be 7774. There we go. 7774, register. And there we go. Perfect. All right, great. So we can see that is working really nicely. We can see all of that's being integrated well. So if I redirect back, there we go. All right, guys, so a bit of a process there on getting that right, but that is essentially how you can go ahead and ensure that it's going to be a random number each time whenever you refresh the page, and that said session is going to persist each time, and that it will be deleted and start anew whenever you make that GET request back to your register page. Right, guys, so that's how you can go ahead and do that. As always, thank you for the support, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.